If we were to list out artists that pump the most rumble in say hard techno tracks, then Beige would be placed somewhere on the top. In this tutorial we will master reverb rumble technique and simplify the rumble kick creation to basically group processing only, making such an approach perfect for beginner producers. More kick drums like that and other sounds useful for hard techno can be found in my hard/industrial techno sample and serum preset pack, but if you are interested in making your own kick sounds, let's just open Ableton instead. For this kind of kick we will need just a single sample. All the kick body and tail will come from distortion, so there is no need for sample layering, which of course makes the sound design more complex. When looking for a kick drum sample, pay attention to the punch in the beginning, this is mandatory, and to the amount of low end in the remaining part of the kick. With fat low end, using a reverb to create rumble is easier. I have chosen this kick sample, but these kick sounds would be fine too. In Simpler, I prepared the kick before fitting it to the reverb. If there is a silence in the beginning of the sample, I trim the kick from the left. I also want to trim the kick from the right to make it shorter. That's because while this part of the kick gives us the punch coming from the transient and fat low end from its body, the tail of this kick isn't powerful at all and we simply don't need it. Instead of that tail, we will play a heavy reverb rumble instead. So stick to making the kick sample around 150 milliseconds long, and if you hear any clicks after trimming the sample, use either fade in or fade out, depending on whether that click you want to remove is in the beginning or in the end of the sample. If you want the kick to sound deeper, you can pitch it down a bit. To make that pitch adjustment sound natural, keep the warping off. This particular kick sounds wide, meaning we have quite a lot of stereo width in the sample. Usually the transient part of the kick sounds more focused, punchy and powerful when it's narrow in that stereo field. To give you a quick example, this is the same kick sound with the stereo image enhanced by a lot. And this is the same kick played in mono. Of course, to make the kick drum punchier, we don't always have to drop the whole sound to mono. To make that stereo width adjustment more precise, I use the width knob in the utility. It's time to create the reverb rumble. Here I have an audio effect track that does parallel processing, and the dry chain we played the kick drum as it is, but in the reverb one I'm using a hybrid reverb effect with dry wet set to 100%. It's an effect that gives two distinct types of reverb and blends them with the blend control. The blue controls in the middle section control the algorithmical part of the reverb that, on average, suit lead sounds better. This reverb is large and smooth. Now let's preview the reverb coming only from the convolution engine. This kind of reverb reminds the rumble much more, and let's stay with that. To fine-tune the rumble I will definitely turn off the internal equalizer that by default cuts the low end. Of course we need lots of low end for our kick. In the Reverb tab, the most important setting is the convolution impulse response choice. It's a short audio sample used to generate the reverb. This will directly set the type of rumble and its rhythm. Keep choosing different impulses until you find something interesting. Once that's done, you can use these controls to fine-tune the rumble. Similarly as with the utility used before, I will make the sound more narrow by using the stereo control. I can also degrade the sound a bit with the vintage control. Once the rumble is done, I export it into another drum rack pad. I want to export the reverb to make sure that it's going to sound exactly the same every time I play it. I add the reverb into the MIDI clip, and in the sampler I switch the playback mode to gate. It will do a very important thing, as it will prevent the reverb from overlapping. With the trigger playback mode, the whole length of the sound will be played, and that might cause low-end interference, which is bad for your mix. With the gate playback mode, I can adjust the sample lengths with the length of the MIDI note in the clip. This way I can precisely stop the rumble and play it over once again at the same time, leaving the low end no chance to interfere. The rumble should consist of lower frequencies only, so for that I use a low pass filter. Remember that the rumble is not only the frequency range from 20 to 60 Hz. Frequencies from 60 to around 250 Hz are important as well, and they contribute to the full sound of the kick drum. Setting the cutoff frequency below 300 Hz is a good starting point. Now we will play both kick drum and rumble. Because both sounds have low frequencies, we again risk low-end overlap, which is bad for our kick drums. It's time to make the reverb dark whenever the kick drum is playing. You can use a normal sidechain compression, but for more control over the rhythm, I will use the volume shaper by Cable Guys. Inside of this plugin I draw a volume automation curve that makes the beginning of the reverb muted, and once the main kick sound comes to its end, I make the rumble pop up with a short fade in. Here is a tip. If you have difficulties with creating a rhythm in Volume Shaper, you can temporarily increase the volume of the rumble by a few decibels to hear both sounds better. The last thing is to adjust both volume and maybe stereo width once again of the rumble. For that I use another utility. It's time to process both rumble and main kick as one, but before we do that, let me advertise myself quickly and just say that if you wish to have other sound design or music production subjects explained in such an easy and practical way, consider going onto my website to learn more about my private music production lessons. Free consultations are available as well. Our group processing chain will begin with lots of distortion coming from the Sound Toys Decapitator. To make this effect aggressive, I use the punish button that gives extra 20 decibels of input gain. Then I increase the drive and pick a distortion style I find most appropriate. To make the kick sound darker, I can use both tone and high cut. At last, I match the loudness of the kick after distortion with the loudness of the kick before distortion to compare both sounds accurately. Let's work with distortion again and enhance only the rumble while leaving higher frequencies untouched. This time I will use the Isotope Trash 2 because it's one of the few plugins that allows for multiband distortion. What's the benefit of that? If I use the Trash 2 to distort the whole frequency spectrum as we did with the Sound Toys Decapitator, the distortion at the beginning will make the low end fatter indeed, but if I try to make it even fatter, I start to change the kick sound too much. Higher frequencies and the transient part of the kick might start to sound bad. Now let's try the same with multiband distortion. I adjust the crossover filter of the low-end band to distort only the frequency range between 20 and around 100 Hz. Now if I apply the distortion to that frequency range, I can push the drive control further, thus enhance the rumble even more, without changing much the rest of the kick drum. And even if I push the drive fader too far and add too much of harmonic content, I don't have to back it down immediately. I can use as well the filter section and roll off some of the frequencies added by distortion. And this is the final preset of Trash 2. On the low end I will use distortion 2 times to beef up the rumble. Each of these 2 distortion stages will make use of a filter section to keep the sound deep, but not bloated or muddy. I also decided to saturate slightly another frequency range, this time without using a filter afterwards. This mid-frequencies band saturation will make the overall kick sound richer. And now we will compare the kick with the whole Trash 2 on and off. The next step towards Beju kick sound is the multiband compression. If we were to take a typical Beju kick drum and listen to its low end, we would notice there is little to none punch there. On the other hand, listening to mid and high frequencies shows where all the kick drum's punch is coming from. To individually shape the dynamics of punch across various frequency ranges, a multiband compressor is used. Unfortunately, in this video I won't cover these settings of a multiband compressor or how to set it up by yourself, because explaining that is a subject to a separate long tutorial that I actually did not so long ago. Today, we will just solo each frequency range and turn on and off their compressors to explore the influence of this multiband compressor over the sound. The dynamics are shaped, so now I will equalize the sound to cut or boost certain frequency ranges by a fixed amount. Let's turn on and off each equalizer band to see what exactly they are doing. Using distortion after equalization might be optional, but it's a good opportunity to show you a cool distortion technique. In Trash 2 I use again multiband processing to distort the low end in a drastic way. This is the kind of texture I want to mix to the kick. Of course, the distortion is now too obvious, so I will turn down the mix fader. What we can notice is that when this distortion is on, the transient part of the kick, so the beginning of the kick drum, seems more interesting and powerful than the transient part without distortion. On the other hand, the rumble with distortion gets worse. To sum up, this distortion could be useful but only in the beginning of the kick. What to do now? I can click the mix fader and reveal its automation lane in Ableton. I have already drew an automation that adds the distortion but only in the beginning of the kick. Let's enable that automation and by turning on and off the trash do, compare the sound of the kick with an enhanced transient. Extra distortion made the beginning of the kick drum more powerful because we added slightly more high-end and harmonics to it by automating the trash do. But what if I just want to make the kick drum punchier without changing the kick sound itself? In the end, you can play around once again with volume automations. This is another instance of volume shaper where I make everything but the beginning of the kick drum quieter. This is going to simulate compression that adds dynamics and punch to the kick sound. After volume shaper, an utility is used to match the loudness of the kick.